Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Kathleen. Nice to see you all. I appreciate you joining. And so, the topic of our conversation today is really about fostering small group instruction. I have seen some of you virtually over the last months and years. And this topic is one that has become really important in a sense of how we are encouraging classroom instruction and the way that we're affecting and impacting in-person learning. And so, our focus and topics are going to kind of center around the ways in which we can help those happen seamlessly and really efficiently within the classroom. Excuse me. Before we do that, a very brief intro for me. As I mentioned, I have met some of you before, so you may have heard this, but I am Sean. I'm the Director of Customer Solutions at Screencastify. I've had the pleasure of supporting JCPS now for, I think, going on 2+ years. And prior to being at Screencastify, I was a high school teacher, department chair, and assistant principal for about 12 years. And so that, I think, really influences the way in which I approach these minutes with all of you. You know, time is a finite resource. I try to stay away from some of the more philosophical conversational components, not because they don't matter, but because if we have such short time together, I really want to focus on the practical and tangible. What things can you all go try today or tomorrow or next week and feel a little bit more excited or capable of trying those things where maybe you didn't before? That's the goal. So we have a couple focus areas today. The first is small group instruction. The second is student expression. And ideally, we will have a few moments for question and answer at the end. So we will start with small group instruction, but before we do that, this is the kind of cursory reminder to double check that you have Screencastify as an extension on your Google Chrome toolbar. So we are a Google Chrome extension, as you all know. As teachers of JCPS, you have unlimited access to all things Screencastify. And so if you look up here, depending if you have yours pinned or not, you should see a orange-ish type arrow. That is the Screencastify icon. And then if you don't see it, there is a puzzle piece next to it where you can go scroll down, find Screencastify, and then click on that pin, at which point when it's filled in, as you can see, as I'll do with Moat, I clicked on it, and now Moat is a visible Chrome extension. So that is how you pin it so that it is easily accessible for your use. If you don't see it and can't find it, do try to navigate over to screencastify.com and download it. But being teachers of JCPS, from my understanding, is you all should have that kind of pre-installed on your device. But if you don't, again, just try to give that a download, please. So with that said, we will continue on. The two conversational parts are, we're going to kind of think more abstractly about as opposed to actually spending time digging into these as a conversation, because I think for the sake of our agreement and kind of discussion specifically is going to be about how this really does impact the in-person learning. And so when we think about small groups, you all are going to do this in a variety of different ways. And just a quick side note, so just some of you know that Zoom does have an interactive whiteboard feature. So if you're either maybe on your phone or if you are clicking around with the interactive whiteboard feature, we're going to see these annotations pop up here. So if you want to just take a look at that, if you wouldn't mind, please. And then the second is that why we teach in small groups. And as we all know that there are certain leveled components to how we teach our classes, that certain groups, you want them to be in the same group because they are academically at a similar level. Other times you want there to be a variance between who is in a group, but there's a lot of ways and time and thought that you all put into that. So we're going to try to kind of talk through some of the examples and ways in which you not only level groups, but at the same time, how we can use video to support the teaching and learning that happens within your classrooms. So that brings us to Screencastify. Screencastify has three primary components: record, edit, and submit. We help you all, hopefully, save time by efficiently and quickly making videos that you can share out to students, parents, and peers in just a few clicks. That hopefully helps you save time with not having to repeat yourself and answer the same question a bunch of times, but also really drives teaching and learning because people now have a renewable resource that they can continuously come back to. If you make a video about any given topic, if you're passing out worksheets, whether it's physical worksheets or virtual worksheets, drop a QR code for that video link on there so that people, parents, adults, when they're helping, they can go ahead and scan that and constantly come back to that. But how do we actually use the tool? And I think that that's something that when we use Screencastify with the amount of people, 20 plus that we have on this meeting today, some of you are going to feel super comfortable and confident with Screencastify. Others, maybe not as much. Maybe you've only made a couple videos. Maybe you never made any. Or it's been a few years and you're kind of reacclimating yourself to the tool. And there's going to be people in between. So some of the things we'll talk about are more like foundational or reminders, while others are going to be kind of pro tips and extensions of what we are working on as a group. So the extension itself has three primary components: browser tab, desktop, and webcam. And then each of these are specific features and adjustments that you can make depending on the type of recording. But where I was going with that before I reshared without thinking about it is that when you click on your extension, you're going to see that this is the same image that that screenshot was just of. So each of these options allow you to customize the type of recording that you want to make. The most common and default is usually going to be desktop. This records anything that you can see on your computer screen. So whether you're starting off in Google Slides or on the JCPS website or on an online textbook, if you click record and it has desktop, anything that you do on your screen while that recording is happening is going to be documented. If I click on webcam only, there's a handful of us that have our cameras on. If you picked webcam only, whatever you see in your box with your camera on the Zoom call right now, that would be what's recorded. Simply what you see on your webcam, so just your face. This is mostly helpful if you wanted to make an announcement, or if you wanted to give very clear directions, or if you wanted to introduce yourself to a new team or club or community or a new parent if they happen to move into the district. These are all things which usually webcam is going to be most helpful for. And the last, which is, I would say, similarly in terms of frequency to webcam only, is browser tab. Some of you out there might have made a recording at some point where you started on Google Slides and then you wanted to navigate over to YouTube. And when you did so, your audio came through. But then once you went to youtube.com and you click play on a video, and then you went back to watch it, you had no audio for your YouTube video. And you may be like, well, why didn't that work? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Well, that's because you probably recorded it on desktop. And the way that our audio is recorded right now, you see this little green bar fluctuating. That's my audio so that it knows it's picking it up. The way that our extension works is that the audio is when I speak into the computer. So if I want to play a video on my screen, whether it's YouTube, an online piece of curriculum, a textbook, whatever it might be, I have that audio coming out of my computer. So it's not going to be picked up with just clicking desktop. If you want to record a YouTube video with audio, you would select browser tab and then make sure that tab audio is toggled on. This is going to allow the extension to be told to pick up the audio that is on that specific browser tab. But just as a note, if I click this, it is only going to record anything on this singular tab. If I happen to navigate to this or another tab, or if I minimize my screen, that would not be recorded. It would only be that singular tab. So that's a general lay of the land of Screencastify Record. We are certainly going to get to edit and submit here in just a few minutes. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about saving time by making instructions available on demand. I am highly confident that anybody on this call has at times had to answer the same question more than once. And by more than once, maybe hundreds of times, depending upon this certain situation or circumstance. So how can we save you time by decreasing that example? How often do you get an email? Mr. Smith, how do I get to blank? Or how do I log into this? Or where am I supposed to go for this? Or you said this in class today, but I forgot. And it's the same thing over and over again. Well, if we have video-based responses to that, you can just send the video, or you can put it in a place that is a common central location that people can continuously come back to, in the same way that you go to Netflix or Hulu or anything else that you watch TV on. Having a database, and I use the word database loosely, but like having a collection of your videos that are organized in a way for parents, adults, and students to come back to, can be a huge time saver and really increase the quality of work, because that information is now that renewable resource and it's readily available. So recording directions can not only save time, but it can also make small group instruction easy. In when you have in your class, say you have 25 students in your second grade classroom and you have 5 leveled groups, if you put all 5 of them into a group in normal circumstances, then what happens? You're probably doing one of two things. You're giving a general class instruction and then saying groups 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, go to your group and then do the thing I just said. But then what ends up happening, as you all know, is that that thing you just said, you're going around and repeating 5 times again to each of the groups. So maybe you skip that step and instead you just put them in their groups and then you're explaining it 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 times. So that logistical time in between can really matter with how many minutes, especially the instructional minutes, that are being taken up as a result. So can recording directions and then having students go into their groups and click play while you're already there and prepped, can that save time and make it easier? Yes, it can. Additionally, if you're recording them on the front end, you now can instantly share those with absent students and what did I miss today? That answer has already now been answered because you made a video for that proactively. And lastly, as I mentioned before, this is a really solid way in which parents can help students at home if you have these videos that are readily available. So I'm going to share this video of my colleague Olivia, but I'm going to mute it because the audio gets a little goofy, as I think you know when we share on Zoom. But as you watch her, I want to kind of walk through a few things. First, she's in webcam only recording mode right now. You notice that she is talking directly to the screen and she is physically manipulating things. She's talking about art directions. If you were going, I thought I had my coffee cup, that if you were to do a no-look draw on a coffee cup, look at it, and she actually shows it to you. She shows you the piece of paper, and then she tells you exactly what you're supposed to be doing. So she walks through with the actual piece of paper and is going through it that way. Now, this is a 35-second video where she just gave verbal directions and then showed an example of what she did. If she was using this in a small group scenario, she could make 5 of these videos in 5 to 6 to 7 minutes and then have those ready for the next day, where if you try to accomplish that, as you all know, with the kids around you in the room, there is no way that that takes 5 to 6 to 7 minutes. It's going to take considerably longer than that. So this is a time save for Olivia in that she spent those minutes at home, quiet, did all of her prep, made the directional videos, and now in class the next day, she can send videos 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to those respective groups. They click play, and they can then watch it 100 times if they wanted to hear and watch Olivia do that direction again. But how does this help us in terms of us being able to do it together with our students in class? So if we were going to imagine having students work on learning centers or any type of group station-based activity, at one of those students are going to play a math game of their choosing. So if we wanted to make a video that shows students how to navigate the website and select a game, I'm going to click on this website and I'm going to do a kind of like a shorter truncated version of this just for example's sake. But if I wanted my students to utilize this website and I was going to have them pick a specific game for each group, so if I wanted to make 2 or 3 or 4 of these, what I would do is I would click on my extension, click desktop, show more options. I'm going to make sure that my show drawing tools are selected. We're a little tab heavy. And I'm going to then double check again. All right, I'm all good. And I'm going to click record. Now, if you have an external monitor or a document camera or anything else plugged into your computer, you are going to have to pick which screen you record. Usually students are only going to have the singular device. So it's not an issue for students, but if you have anything additional plugged in, you would need to pick which screen you're recording. So at this point now, as you can see, I have my webcam embedded and I have my annotation toolbar down here on the bottom. A couple quick notes is that these are all modifiable. I can take my webcam and I can move it. I can do the same with the annotation toolbar. And depending on what it is that you're teaching and wanting to focus on, that's going to be where you actually look through and try to figure out what makes the most sense for what you're teaching. Now, in this case, because I have this webcam in there, I'm going to tell my students that they're going to go through and they're going to click grade K. And then when they are ready for their group, because we are going to do a special holiday lesson, they're going to click holiday. And then they're going to pick this one. And when they are ready, then they're going to go through and they're going to play their game and they're ready to go. Now, because as you may have caught that the annotation toolbar disappeared when I went to this page, depending upon the interactivity of a certain website, sometimes that will go away, where the annotation options are still available back here on my Google Slides. But when I am going through here, if it goes away, you can always stop your recording by clicking on the extension and clicking stop, or by coming back to that page, at which point the annotation toolbar would have still been there had I not clicked stop. And so our goal is to be able to create these types of videos with our annotation toolbars. Now, before we do this, we want students to be able to know how to do things. And so as you are working through any time that there's an instructional video for students, signaling, segmenting, and weeding, those are 3 topics that we have talked about previously. Even if this video is to show students how to navigate a website and select a game, we still want to be super clear, do one thing at a time, and then try to minimize as much noise as possible. And so if I was doing that recording, I'm going to want to have those annotation options, and I probably would actually pick another website, especially depending upon the grade level. If I was using this for like kindergarten, 1st or 2nd grade, I would want them to see annotations the whole way. And if I went to a website where they were not able to see those annotations, I would pick something different. If I had older learners, I would probably stick with it because I think that their ability to kind of translate audio into click patterns on their own is a little bit higher. But again, you know your students better than anyone, so just take that into consideration. But the goal here in terms of creating these is that we want you to be able to help students navigate a website or any type of activity where it might be in a small group environment. And that might include using different variations of those annotation tools. Or when you pick the mouse action, if you just want them to go and click log in, that focus mouse is going to gray out everything except what's underneath your spotlight. All right, everyone, let's come back together. Hopefully that was helpful. And I think any time that we go through and do something, especially like that, for some of you, that might have been the first time that you actually went through and created a directions video for students. So there's a lot to think about, but I do want to point out that as you went through and did that, this page is the video watch page, which would have been the default screen that you all ended up on as soon as that video was completed. So what we'll do is we will come back to kind of show all of the options that start from here, because there is quite a bit of stuff that you can do in terms of really expanding how you're sharing those quick instructional videos. But we also want to keep moving just for the sake of us being able to get through as much as we can in the short time, because we are almost halfway through already. So additionally, as we go through and we make custom direction videos for small groups, there is also a world in which having students check their work for self-assessment using videos can be extremely helpful. And so as you look at this picture, draw a picture for each problem, students are able to provide a significant amount of insight into their process and procedure by making their recordings. Now, that probably would be done via Submit in terms of those submissions, because the student access in JCPS is a little bit different than teacher access. But that doesn't mean that students cannot still be thinking about the way in which they are checking information and using videos for that. But with that in mind, there are several things that you can do as this process unfolds to make videos even better for small groups. And we never expect those videos to be perfect. A lot of times we will encourage to just think about that just a little bit better. When you make these videos, there are times when you can share it out just as is, or there are times when you want to make some changes because the audience that you're sending it to is going to be parents or community members or your students. That is going to take a different level of care, as opposed to if you were sending a video to your peer or your teaching partner. There's different stuff that's just acceptable in that scenario, where if you're sending it to parents, maybe it's not. So for those of you that have never used our editor, there is a variety of things that we can do with our editor. And so those include adding text, zooming, cropping, blurring out, and adding title slides. And I'm going to do this with the kind of under the understanding that if I wanted to use this for multiple small group levels of instruction, let's say that I did this on like general math choice activity. I might like hyperlink the website. Quick pro tip, make sure you are titling your videos every time you make one. That page that we're on right here This is the video watch page, and this is also where you can retitle all of your videos anytime you make them. If you don't retitle them, you end up with, if you're like me, going to my video library. This is my page that has all the videos that I've ever made. If I search for untitled, which is that default name, I have 140 untitled videos. Highly discourage people from doing that. Many of these are unusable. I have no idea what these videos are, even from a month ago, unless I'm going to really try to search what that thumbnail is. But a lot of times that's not going to help me when I want to quickly access a resource. So make sure that you are titling those videos with something that is helpful. Now, this would be a specific piece of direction that was going to go to all of my groups, but I need to edit it in order to make it really helpful and help me save time. So I can click open in editor, at which point that's going to instantly deposit that video that we just made. Now, as you're going to be asked to edit here in just a few moments, if you still have that video link up that you made, great. If not, I will show you how to re-access that here in just a minute. If you would like to have a video walkthrough of the editor, you can click next and it will walk you through a few things on your own, and you can feel free to do that when we have some time to break out in just a moment. But for us, I want to just point out a couple quick tours in terms of what are some strong, more commonly used components of our editor. The first is that we are a web-based editor. You can certainly download and edit all Screencastify videos, but you can also edit any MP4 or .mov file that you have on your computer. And that is going to just be super easy. Add media. You can click Drive if it's in your Google Drive, or you can click Upload if it's in your computer. And this is going to take me to, just like I would with anything else, the files on my computer. Here's an MOV file for my phone. Here's a Minecraft example where I recorded it for my son. Both of these I could drop into my editor, at which point I could then edit and share out with there. So it does not have to be from Screencastify. As you can see, this is a QuickTime movie I took on my phone of my son playing hockey. That I can drop in my editor. It can be anything and everything that you have in a video format that you can use in the editor. But once I'm here, I want to make some changes to the video that we made together. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in so that I have most of my toolbar full of the video clip. Now you can zoom in very much. And what this will do is it'll allow you to make very refined edits. So if you are watching this time marker and I just keep clicking, I'm still on second 28. All of this is second 28. So if I really want to make a specific refined granular change, I would want to zoom all the way in. For some of my big wholesale changes, which is going to be primarily the stuff that I do at the beginning of my editing process, I'm going to leave it pretty zoomed out. And so let's start with the first edit that is going to apply almost always to your entire video is your crop edit. And I say that because as you look at my screen, you'll see the tabs open, you'll see my bookmarks, some favorites, and then all my apps at the bottom. This is where if I'm sharing with my teaching partner, I don't really care if I share this out as is, no problem. But if it's to a student or a parent, I mean, I can make a couple of changes and just make this look a little bit better. So I'm going to do that. My video right now is highlighted. As you can see, it's bordered in yellow. That means that I've clicked on it. I'm then going to click crop. And so now I have this modifiable orange box. And I'm just going to move that box in place so that nothing that is on my computer outside of this web page is visible. So you can see now in gray is my favorites, my tabs, my apps, and everything else. And I'm just going to click done. And now just like that, all of that unnecessary noise has been eliminated. So the ability for my students to have less things that distract them went way up by me eliminating all of that. If you are a person that likes to get settled at the beginning of your video, so like you push record, you like move your shoulders, you clear your throat, and then you're ready to record about 5 seconds in, I would go to, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 seconds, and I click play annotation toolbar. And I would listen for that moment when I started recording. And when I started, I would go back just to make sure I'm good. And then I click cut. Now this little chunk at the beginning is unnecessary to me. So I will just click delete, and now that's gone. From here, there are times when you think about small group instruction where you make custom instructions for multiple groups or multiple classes. When I would do this, I would make it all at the same time. I would just make one long recording that for me, it would be 20 minutes. But then I'm going to cut those clips and I'm going to actually export them all so that I can make that in one solid move. And the way you would do that is you would just click cut. and now you've got different clips here. And so each of these is going to let you change and modify different components of that video. You can make a singular long recording and then add title slides in front of each of those clips that can act as an internal timer. Or it could be for group A, do this, group B, C, and D, fast forward to your slide. There is countless options of things that you can do within the editor. But another note, if you're ever going to edit, make sure you edit first. Do not add questions or captions until your editing is finished, because we are editing right now. When I export this back to Screencastify, this is now one cohesive video. So once this is done, that's when I'm going to add captions and questions. If I were to add questions here, then click open in editor, it was going to erase all of my questions. So again, record, then edit, then add captions or questions. So we're going to pause there for a moment. I'm going to ask you all, give it a shot. The edit is something that may look a little bit daunting, but we would love for you to get in and try editing, especially in consideration if you are going to use this for something with small groups. So this tab would be what similarly looks like for you if you made the video during the first 7 minutes. If for some reason you X'd out and don't have that visible anymore, all you need to do is click on the extension and then click on My Videos. And that's going to pull up your video library with accessible options that you can then open. And then you can click open in editor and throw it in there. So the goal for the next 7 minutes is to just give it a shot. Try to make some edits, play around with it. The more you practice, like with anything else, the better off it's going to be.
All right, let's come back together, everybody. I do want to make sure that we are being mindful of time, primarily because we only have about 15 minutes left. So the title clip component that I just briefly shared, that's a really strong addition to any Screencastify video, especially when we consider small group work, because the timer piece, when we think logistically about the classroom, is it can be kind of challenging. Is that you stop students, you give them a direction, they all have to move, and then you have to give them another verbal cue, and then they all have to move back, and then it's another verbal cue to start. So by utilizing the title clip slide as a built-in timer, whether it's to gather materials, practice a skill, or consider a question, that's something that we really want to encourage and increase use of. Because if I am using this title slide and I want to say to my students, like stop, turn to a partner, I can be, again, as specific with this as possible. All of this font is modifiable, both in color and in size. Move to front, move to back. Whatever you want can be accomplished in terms of those adjustments to the actual slides. However, when we want to elongate that timer, it's even easier. So I click on the first second marker and I see that we're at 32 seconds. If I wanted this to be a minute long, I'm just going to pull that out and I'm going to see that now I'm in a minute 23. We'll go a little bit further and now I'm at 132. And so now I have a 1 minute long timer that I can just click play. They're ready for their group because we are going to do a special holiday lesson. And that's going to go for as long as I set it to. And this way, you as the teacher can actually be doing other things as opposed to knowing and worrying about the time and when they're ready to move. This is going to be a natural guide for those students. And this could be everything from doing a specific skill to transitioning and moving groups. So there's a lot of utility with how you decide to use those title slides, but definitely give it a chance if you decide that that's something that would be helpful. In the next few minutes, I want to share 2 additional components that can help both with how you group students, but also with the easy access to understanding what it is that they're doing. And that's where viewer analytics and embedded questions comes up. Now, those folks that have joined us for previous sessions, this might be a bit of a review, but that's completely okay because we really do know how important this is. So I'm going to X out with a large amount of those tabs. Now we're looking at the video that we all made together. If you make 100 videos in a school year, that is wonderful. But what if you don't know if anybody's watching them? That's where the real challenge comes in. And so over the last couple of years, we heard from teachers 2 pieces of feedback that were the most common. They wanted to know if students were engaging with their video, and they wanted to be able to add questions. And so both of those are options in Screencastify. Some of you know that, others, this may be an introduction. So if I'm going to share this video with my entire fourth grade classroom, I come to school on Wednesday, students welcome. We're going to start class by watching this 1 minute long video. So how long does it take? I'm going to give my students 2 or 3 minutes to complete watching this. But I want to know who has and who has not engaged. So when I click on this little italicized link beneath the share link is show share settings. And now it says private, and that's not good. We don't want it to say private. So I'm going to click edit. And what do I want to track and who can access it? Well, anyone with the link can access my video. And I want to track by email address. So the viewers are required to sign in with a Google account in order to have this tracking information. If you want more info, there's a hyperlink here at the bottom that's extremely helpful in explaining the process for our viewer analytics. But then I'm going to click save. And so now you'll notice that it says 0 viewers. I'm going to copy this link and I'm going to drop it in the chat. If anybody is available, if you could please click on that link for me. And again, in our example, if I'm in my class and I have this minute-long video, I'm going to give my students 3 minutes or so. And at the conclusion of that time, I'm then going to click refresh. And so now I see that 2 folks have viewed that video. Thank you for doing that. And in my classroom, it would be the same thing. Is that if only 2 of my students had watched this video, I know we're not ready to move on. Now, we wouldn't do the same thing here, obviously, but it'd be a really good moment for you to be like, hey, I've got 25 students, only 2 of you have watched the video. How come? Are your Chromebooks not charged? Was the link broken? Are you just not doing it? So there's a lot of reasons why, but as you give that timing and as you click refresh, this is going to tell us if students actually engage with the video. Now, it doesn't tell us that they necessarily watch the whole video, but when you click on it, this does indicate to us that these 3 individuals clicked on this link on this day this many times. But you also may have noticed that for the folks that clicked on it, you only watch a couple seconds and you X out. It does track as a view. And we all know students are super smart and they're going to figure that out. So how do we mitigate some of those false views? Well, that's where interactive questions comes in. So if I wanted to add questions, Avery, I just saw your comment. I completely agree. This is a great component for parent communication as well, in that if you send an email or a video link to 30 parents, 30 students and their parents, so it's multiplied by however many, and you see that only 3 watched it, that stinks, and we hope that doesn't happen, but sometimes it does, and we know that. But it's going to give you a much greater level of insight into the parent and adult involvement at home, where conversely, if you see 29 students had their parents or adults view that, that's amazing. Now, note to selves, if your principal ever sends you a video with a Screencastify link, just kind of make sure you click on it. The joke I always give is that, as an assistant principal, I knew half the people were reading the emails or less. So if you do see a Screencastify video link from your principal, make sure you're clicking on it because they can see if you watched it or not. So when I want to add questions, we typically recommend beginning, middle, and end at minimum. And so when we think about that, it's really about the way in which you want students to authentically engage with those videos. So I would, anytime I'm going to ask a question or insert a question here, I'm going to click play and I'm going to listen for the right moment when I want that question to be inserted. And when I'm ready, I'm going to click add question and I'm going to insert my question here. Right now, we have the ability to support true, false, or any multiple choice A, B, C, and D responses. We are currently building, and I just got confirmation from our VP of product that within 90 days, we are going to have expanded question options that include short answer, long response, and some additional functions and features within questions as well. So we're really pumped about that. But at this point, you still have a ton of ability to add these questions in. And Kathy, I did see your note, and I will touch on that in just 1 second. And so when I'm ready to pick the right answer, all I have to do is make sure that that circle has green next to it. And when it does, I click save. And just like that, I now have inserted a question for my students to be able to answer. I'll go a little bit later, go halfway through, whatever it might be. When I'm ready, I'll click add another question here. And same thing, add responses, and we'll pick a right answer. And so now I have two questions added, both of which are shown by these gray dots right here. And so when I'm ready, I can go through and review all my questions. I pull that list view out and I see anything that I've added is here. If I made a mistake and I actually didn't want this at 20 seconds, but I wanted it at 30, all I have to do is put 30, and now you're going to watch that second marker was pulled to that question. So as I have my questions finished and I'm ready to share, this is why I mentioned about editing first, because this question piece is the last step of you really being able to refine where you're inserting these post making those changes. Where if you add the questions first and then you go back and change the video, it's going to take them away because you're changing the structure and integrity of the actual video file. But once the questions are inserted, you're going to click share, and you're sharing the exact same way as you would share from the normal video management page. And I'm going to copy this link, and just for time's sake, I'll walk through what that will look like. And I'm going to paste this link here. So this is now the student view. And so you'll notice that I have these questions pasted here. I will play. Now, how does this mitigate false views, right? Well, my students can't skip ahead. They can't skip past questions. So like if I get there, I have to answer this question. So I'll click true. And then I'm going to keep going. Now I can fast forward in between, but I can't skip past. Now I want to bring your attention to something. You'll notice that I answered the first one. That's green because I got it right. But the second one just popped up here. I'm gonna kind of X away from that. So I've not yet given an answer to my second question. When I come back to the question page as the teacher, same deal. If I give my students a few minutes, at the end of those few minutes, I'm going to go and I'm going to click on responses. And I see that Sean Conway has gotten one question right. He got question 1 correct, but there's a dash under question 2. That means that I did not give a response there. Now, when I do, I got it wrong, but what you're going to see happen is that instantly refreshed without me even having to refresh the page. But two things happened. A red X appeared because I got it wrong, but also this blue check mark appeared, which says all questions answered when I hover over it. So if I send this out to 25 students, my first thing as a teacher after that time, I'm going to look for blue check marks. And if I see everybody has a blue check mark, at minimum, I know that they have all at least given a response to those questions. When I click on students, if I have multiple students responding, I can have a drop down and go one by one, have one-on-one conversations with students. Or if I want to have whole class chats, I can go question by question, and we can talk about overall performance of the class, which then again leads us to that small group piece with being able to really redefine and regroup students based upon how they feel about certain things, or making sure that there's a distribution of groups within, a distribution of students within those groups. So that was a lot in a short period of time. Kathy, I'm just looking at your note now that thank you. I'm super glad to hear that you think it was helpful, especially for ESL students. I think we want there to be a really wide range. Yeah, and so Kathy, we happy to chat and kind of help with anything else that you might need. But since you mentioned the ESL component, I just want to share one other thing. When you go to video management page, this is that spot where we all kind of start from. Right now, for all folks, captions is live. Mine still says beta, but beta should be taken off in the next, 12 hours or so. You all should have access to auto-generated captions that are currently in English right now. But again, I got confirmation this morning that within the next 90 days, we will also have additional languages. And so you can right now you can auto-generate English-based captions for any of your videos. So when you think about ESL populations or any especially younger learners, just in general, being able to have the text of the video that's always visible and available can be a huge asset. So when you click auto generate, I picked a longer video, so it takes a second. But as this is happening, what you'll notice. So at this point now, as you can see, what you'll notice is that it auto generated text tracks of captions. When I click review and edit, it's going to pick up these time markers. And when I go through and I actually want to make changes, like my name is spelled Shaun, S-H-A-U-N, obviously. So I would want students in my class to make sure that their names were spelled correctly. And when I make those changes, if you look on the screen, when I adjust the text changes as I actually modify it in real time. So you can see what you are changing it with. And then that's going to be what happens when you actually share that video out. So make any adjustments or changes as you want. David asked, once your language will go live, will we be able to auto-generate in multiple languages? So David, you, just so I understand your question, you would be the one picking the language. So the student, at least not yet, this is a long-term goal. Eventually, well, let me start in order. What the next thing that's going to happen is up here where you see captions, English US, there more than likely it'll be there where you have a drop down, and then it would say Spanish, Arabic, Russian, and language choices there. If I understand the second part of your question, longer term, if a student gets a video from their teacher, then they will have the option. Then this a little bit though, I want to set expectations correctly, but long term, the student will have the ability to change those captions from the viewer side. But the next step of this is going to be the creator of the video would choose the language of those captions. So take that for what it's worth. Now, I will also note, though, that even though it's not live yet, there is a workaround where if you click these three dots and you download the VTT file, so I now have a VTT file titled with my video choice. As some of you know, you can go to Google Translate, and as long as the language you're changing to has English characters, you can translate that VTT file into any other, again, English character language, and then download that, come back here and upload the new one. And then those are going to be second for second change with that downloaded language that you picked from Google Translate. So it's really not that convoluted. It's a few steps, but it is a doable workaround in the meantime. But you will have other options. So